Glowe Insider, we are going to talk about celebrating, and not because it's just this time of the year, because we believe celebrating is a timeless activity and something that we have often talked with our leaders about because it is sometimes hard for them. And so we thought, what more perfect topic than to talk about it and find out what we're hearing from our executives and leaders and how we personally have maybe, I know I've personally evolved in this, and talk about what it means to our physiology and our brains. So we're looking forward to this conversation today. So just to get us started, I guess I would love to hear everybody's perspective on their own. How do you think about celebrating? Has that changed for you over the years, perhaps? And what do you think is so important about it?
I think for me in the past, when I thought about celebrating, it was literally partying, like going out, having a drink, dancing, and celebrating the end of the year or whatever it might have been. And I think the big shift that I'm sort of noticing in myself is that celebrating doesn't necessarily mean that. Celebrating means integrating all the experiences, all the goods that have happened, and literally integrating them into my body by calling them into my heart to feel what results I've created, what impacts I've made. So my big shift, and the shift that I've been really practicing with my clients, is sitting with all the great things that have happened and meditating on it and really truly integrating it into our lives and thinking about how do we want to show up next year with that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be go out and celebrate with champagne, although that's fine. Our body does need the integration of embodying the thoughts of, yes, this happened, and maybe writing it down and actually feeling it in our bodies.
So that internally or internalizing the celebration versus the
Yes.
external, which is probably more commonly thought of when we say the word celebrate.
Yeah, I will confess that I never really used to do either. And it's kind of hard to admit that, right? Because I feel like, of course, we should be celebrating when good things happen, right? We know that intuitively. But I think for me, for a lot of my life, no matter how good it was never good enough, right? To justify the celebration. And so it wasn't that I was beating myself up. It's just that I was always chasing something bigger or more or better. And so whatever I would accomplish along the way, I would be like, okay, good, great, done, next. Great, done, next. Great, done, next. And so for me to stop and say, wow, that was a moment, like it was so incredibly uncomfortable. And so I've had to work really hard at making sure to not just celebrate the big wins, where literally people sit you down in a chair and make you recognize it because like something huge has happened, but even the really small ones, because it's like practicing that. One, it invites more wins, I'm convinced. And also it then trains you to just continue recognizing all of the good things along the way, which both shape the path and also condition you to just be grateful, instead of always in that state of lacking where you're chasing. So I think celebrating is incredibly important, but the first to admit that it doesn't always come easy for leaders.
For
And
sure.
when I think about this, I was thinking about what you said, Kim, about celebrating the small wins, and you too, Ariana. And that's extremely important to me because when I think back through my career and what celebration looked like and when I felt like I was truly celebrating, when we got to the big wins, I didn't feel like celebrating because I was like, I've been here every step of the way. Like this was inevitable by now. I don't feel like this was a big yes and an aha moment. It's because I've been in it and doing the work and just working really hard this whole time. So it's almost like the excitement is over by the time you actually hit the milestone. And also in my role in my past, I usually was the person that was in charge of planning the celebrations, at least on a firm level. And so I didn't feel like I could really be present at those because I was worrying about logistics and things like that. So when I think back, all of my favorite celebration moments were one-on-ones with like Whitney and other leaders at times where I would go out and we could just have a more intimate conversation. And especially that was focused on me because a lot of my role was focused on helping other people do their best, just like it still is, helping other people be their best and do their best work. And so I had to really be intentional about the moments of celebrating me and what I was able to accomplish. And then I think too, as a family, myself and my spouse, we have these moments where we're like, wow, we really killed it. Let's go get lobster tails from Costco. Or we've just done little things. And it's usually eating for us. Like we usually just go spend a lot of money on food somehow, some way, and just kind of toast our family success.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have to say, I am resonating with all of the answers, but Kim, my response to my own question was immediately like, I've not done a very good job at this. This really does not come easy for me. And it's something that I think, especially in the last 2 years, I've been really intentional about focusing on the smaller things because those do lead to the bigger things. And I completely resonate with what you're saying, Celeste. It's almost like, well, duh. I mean, I don't know when you reach that big win. However, that being said, I do feel like there are moments when I don't recognize that something is really big and I don't pause enough to say, whoa, that was amazing. And just recognizing it first before even celebrate. I mean, however the celebration is internally or externally, pausing to recognize it, I think is where I usually get stuck because like you, Kim, I'll just blow right by. I'm like, oh, well, that's great. Now we're on to the next thing. So I think it's really that pause and just recognizing it, whether it's someone else saying, hey, hello, you just need to recognize what just happened here, or just, being more mindful. But I think that's one of the roles that we play with people because we see it as outsiders. Don't you think?
Very much so. And I think that sort of having struggled with it and understanding the resistance to it, in a way, it makes us uniquely both qualified and also empathetic to how hard it can be. And also just to the importance of doing it, because now that we actually are so intentional about doing it, we can speak to the results that come from doing it. So I think it's super important. And it's something, I don't think it comes intuitively to a lot of leaders, right, who are super goal oriented.
And I also think that you have to be willing to want to feel joy because leaders who don't feel comfortable feeling joy because maybe that is an uncomfortable emotion for them, they tend to celebrate less. And so in this idea of becoming an awake leader, a high impact leader, we really want to feel all of our emotions, including joy. And it shocked me when I was reading about, that most people actually, not most, but many people are actually afraid of feeling joy in their bodies because joy actually and excitement feel very similar to anxiety. The only difference is how we perceive it in our brain. So excitement is actually, very chemically similar to how we feel that body anxiety and all of how it is presented in our body. So what I would offer for leaders who might struggle with this is to just sort of acknowledge that, yes, I'm feeling really uncomfortable, but the only thing I need to do is say, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited 3 times, because you're telling your body that it's excitement versus anxiety.
That's like a way to hack your brain.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This makes me think of the big leap too, because I think there's a component of whether you feel like you deserve to experience joy as well. I know I have those moments where, like, at the end of every week, even before we started on our Slack channel, posting 3 great things that happened, which I'm so glad that we're doing.
Me too.
Sometimes someone would send a message at the end of the week, like, we killed it this week. And I'm like, well, can we really be killing it every week? Like, I don't know. Maybe we're setting the bar too low, but it's been really hard to get past that, to realize that you don't have to reserve joy for a couple times a year or like only the absolute biggest public wins or something. Like, it's okay to celebrate every day, every week, every month, because it just puts you in a mindset where you can achieve more and more growth. So that's a huge.
Yeah, It's the same idea with gratitude, right? Is that, you know, when we sit down and we think about all the things we already have, it generates that joy. And joy is a self-generated emotion. So it's available to us at any point. So even if things are happening outside of us that are not that great, we can still choose to find, you know, meaning in what is. So, you know, just even saying that, you know, I'm sitting here in this present moment and I have heat, you know, I'm not outside, I'm not freezing. And that in itself can generate joy. So really training ourselves to do that more often, as you said, Celeste.
I think one thing, just reflecting on the executives that I've been working with and just sort of the experience in general with celebrating, is that there's this fear, right? Of like, if I feel joy and I celebrate it, holy shit, the foot, you know, the shoe's going to fall tomorrow, right? Like if I say it's too good and I allow it to be amazing, then something bad's going to happen. So let's not acknowledge that we're there, or it's going to demotivate people. Or there's all these stories, there's all this conditioning about like, stay hungry, right? Stay afraid, stay not certain. And all of it is really, I think, meant to kind of keep people small and in line. And I don't think any of it's actually very helpful, but I understand it, because I feel like we were all brought up with it in some way of like, you know, the minute you completely release and let go, what happens next? And it's almost like fable of something terrible. Well, it's all part of the journey. And so it's how we view things and perceive things. But I genuinely think that alone can hold people back. Or as you said, Ariana, like people are uncomfortable with joy. I think sometimes people are afraid of it, right? Or what happens if they feel too much of it? The other side of it is coming next, right? People are afraid of feeling all of it. And so if you stay sort of steady and in the middle and not too high, not too low, it feels safe. But if you go really, really high, that means you might also at some point feel really, really low. And we're not super good with that.
People don't want to be uncomfortable, so they'd rather not celebrate. So therefore, just keep it vanilla and pretty low.
I was just going to say, I feel like Whitney always describes this, you know, how far do you think your emotions vary? And she has these like, do you think it's between like two bands like this or like this? and so many people live here where they're like, joy, a little bit of sadness, but like it's pretty good because I don't have to feel too deeply at any point along this journey. And yet we know that in order to get the best results and become the highest potential version of yourself, you have to be willing to feel like a huge variation of all the types of wins and losses and joy and pain and everything that's part of the human experience.
I think for me, it's hard to think about, I have a hard time connecting with people who stay in the band.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not that I, you know, want people to feel those low lows, yet I just feel like there's a humanness to the variability a little bit. And when people are staying like this so tight because they don't want to break out of the band, or they're too whatever, afraid or whatever to celebrate, I have a hard time connecting. And I was thinking about this notion of connecting because when our leaders are kind of not celebrating or struggling to celebrate or everything else, it's much harder for their people, I think, to want to celebrate a win that they had in their job or you know, their particular role or something. So I think there's an interesting dialogue to be had about this connecting what the leader's perspective is on celebrating and the rest of the organization.
Yeah, I love Brennan Burchard. He's been my online mentor for a long time. And one of the things that I love that he says is that we as leaders are role models. Our job as leaders is to generate the energy. So energy is not, or joy is not a thing that's, on its own. A power plant generates energy. That's what humans do. So as leaders, we really want to show up for our people so that if we see that the energy has dropped, how can we show up today to inspire them? How can we reconnect them to the vision? How can we reconnect them and create story around all the things, all the accomplishments we've created, because we need to create that meaning for them and paint the picture. And so really, if you are a leader who sort of is, all about results and getting things done, pause and think about, how can I now create a story around this so that they can find themselves in this story and generate that energy for them.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the connectedness of the organization. And I know we talk to leaders about this often, and we were just visiting about this with someone the other day about kind of this growth, this company is wanting to grow, and talking about the growth ecosystem. And we were talking about, instead of being so narrow to only talk about the sales activities, thinking about how we can connect everyone to growth, and then thinking about the different tasks and the different roles that people play, and honoring that as part of the bigger win or the success or something like that. It's never one person who by themselves create, a success. It is a team thing. And so I think how a leader shows up for that, and I think it also goes with being seen. If someone's role is not seen as important or relevant, and if a leader is celebrating only the salesperson or something that's ringing the bell, that could diminish a lot of other people's, like, well, but I created the deck. I, made all the appointments and made sure everything was right in the Zoom room or the conference room or whatever it is. I mean, there was a lot of people who contributed probably to that success.
This makes me think of a whole other thread of how, when we come into companies, we're there to transform. And so that means we're creating a lot of new things. We are introducing new messaging, new ways of speaking about things. And people are often surprised to notice that when we do that, we really are telling the story of how everything that's been done up to this point has also led to the ability to transform. So when we're saying, okay, this is brand new, this is a new way to talk about this, and here's who we are now, it's not a new who we are, it's who we've always been. And it's a new way to think about it, and a new way to include everybody in what that company creates and what the value creates. Like, we have this one company, we just helped them totally rebrand, but in a way that really honors their history. The reason they're able to claim to say that they're as valuable as they are is because they have, 30 years of experience and expertise. And who was doing that? It's all the people who are in the company today and who have been part of that story. So it's really cool to be able to weave that in. And there's another company too, where they have multiple businesses, and they wanted to understand, how do we kind of bring all these under one brand? And we realized that one of the companies was kind of like the lab for helping inform what the other companies are doing. And so I'm so excited to reveal that to that team in a couple weeks, and have these people from this company realize, whoa, like this couldn't have happened without me. They're going to feel so great. I'm just really excited about that.
What I hear you, like, I'm listening to you and thinking about, one, how amazing it is to get to do that for people, right? Like, we're so lucky we get to do that. And the celebration has to include everybody. And that's a really big piece, is that when you celebrate, a success, or you're celebrating what you're doing next, or even just growth, whatever it is, it needs to take into account everybody. And it doesn't mean everybody needs a bottle of champagne, right? It means everybody's effort, everybody's role needs to be seen, acknowledged, and from a very genuine, heart-centered place in the leaders. And I'm thinking about a conversation I had this week with a leader who celebrated a new division with that division for the first time. And he was sharing with me, like, just the gratitude that he felt in being able to celebrate this team and what this team has accomplished, right? And you could just, like, feel the heart behind it, and what a cool experience this was. And that's different, right, than trying to do a celebration that's just for people. When you're like, I just want to do this for you because it's expected, and we're going to do a holiday celebration for the team. Like, when a leader genuinely feels the gratitude for the team and gratitude for what's been accomplished, it's a totally different feeling in that celebration than just creating sort of an event to do a thing. And so I think that, to your point, having the vision to see all the components that make up what is possible and all the people that contributed to it as part of why you're celebrating is so critical to making it feel like something that's both glue and lifting everybody up.
I was thinking about the question that we received at our Slow Down to Speed Up event that was around celebrating. And it also speaks to, I think, some leadership fatigue. So I want to, because we never actually talked about this after the event. I think we all kind of lunged forward to help him. So I want to bring it up. So this person was talking about, well, how do you get, I think it was, how do you get excited or how do you celebrate when, a project has been dragging on for a really long time and it was, and everyone's kind of feeling like we're going to get to the end and it's like, who cares? We're just ready to be done with this and on to the next. And so I hope I'm framing that as I remember it correctly, but I think that leadership fatigue, and I think all of us kind of were like, but wait, this is such a great opportunity, because because it got extended, the timeline got extended, and probably, yes, everyone is kind of tired of it and they're frustrated by it and things like that, but what a huge leadership opportunity. But I want to hear what you guys were thinking, because I know what I was thinking at the time and how we answered it, but I really am curious.
Well, I mean, all I could think of was that the leader's view of what was going on was absolutely going to be the team's view of what was going on, right? So the fact that the leader was over it, right? You could just tell he was over it, was going to inform how everybody else was going to feel. And so I think for me, it was a moment of, I completely understand that, the disappointment and the, okay, and then no, and okay, like that's really, really hard. But as a leader, like you are the one person who, even when all of that happens, has to continue finding, right, the threads that are going to keep people, one, appreciating the good that is happening, and also the reasons why this is continuing to be part of your story, right? Part of the organization, why the project is still alive, why it still matters, why it's still important, why we're still showing up. And so just seeing the leader so bought into the idea that this is like, oh my God, this is just terrible, let's just move on. That's where the shift has to happen. The team will follow whatever that narrative is that is, set by the leader, whatever the leader is believing, that team will absolutely 100% follow as long as it's delivered with conviction. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, also focusing on the engagement part of, when we ultimately think about human happiness and behavior and flow states, even we think about, how engaged can we get into what we're doing? And that actually is really rewarding in itself. And as leaders, I think if we can support our people in recognizing where the growth was, right? To say, this is a really challenging situation and you used this and this skill or talent to create this result, and focus on those types of actions versus just a result, or hey, we were going to create XYZ, gadget or whatever, and we did it, but then never actually reflect on what talents were being used, right? So I love this idea of, how can we paint the picture of being in flow more and challenging ourselves. And we know that challenging people 4% is the key, the magic number. So, if we can really offer that 4% challenge for people every day, even through these hard situations, we can actually get them in flow faster.
So I just got this really strong visual that's totally off the wall, but probably expected from me by now. So I was thinking about what it means to be a resilient leader. And a resilient leader is really focused on the end goal. However, a resilient leader also knows how to find wins, find joy, and just connect with a feeling of progress in many different ways. So here's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about Spider-Man swinging through a city. And when Spider-Man swings through a city, he's not flying, he's shooting webs and grabbing onto them. And he can swing so far on a certain string, and then the usefulness of that one runs out, and you've got to attach to another building to be able to swing. And so I'm thinking about the path through. It's not a linear path. It's not like he's going from point A to point B. he is swinging and then he's looking around. Okay, what's the next building I can attach to? What's that next like small little thing that I can be looking for, attach the web to? And like, frankly, sometimes the web doesn't attach and like you might have to throw another one. He never hits the ground though, by the way. There's always like something always happens to save the day and keep him swinging along. And I don't know why that came to me, but I think that's what resilient leaders do. You're looking for that next thing to attach to, and you're like, I'm going to make this happen no matter what. I'm going to keep swinging. I'm not going to fall down, and neither is my team. And the path through the city might not look the way I originally envisioned, but we're just going to keep moving.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. There's momentum there too that I think people could grab onto, because that's pretty cool. Well, I think, what we've talked about today is there are blocks individually, and as leaders, it's important to first recognize what might be blocking you and find some tools. And Ariana gave us a couple of tools to think about, to enjoy celebrating and recognizing joy in your life a little bit more. I think we talked about the importance of the leader and the connectedness to the organization as an important part of this, and recognizing that how they view celebrating is probably going to be the view of the team. And so even more important to recognize that relationship between you and your team. And then lastly, I think it's really just talking about or thinking about how you're responding to, I think, hard situations, because there is moments of joy. You can find joy, in the hard times. And I know that with all of our clients and many companies out there, there's a lot of challenges coming at them. And it doesn't mean that joy has to be absent. And so I think that hopefully this is a good reminder for people that this is just one thing that is sometimes challenging, but it is really important. And I loved the analogy of the, humans being the power generators, because we certainly believe that here at Glowe. And to experience joy does give you that energy, does give you that power to keep going. So this was a great, great, great conversation. So glad we did it.